Hey friends, it's Lisa Williams. I am the Chief Inspiration Officer here at Perfect Side Gigs. Welcome to our interview series, Corporate to Entrepreneur. We are having so much fun hearing from the top experts of our day today that have already made the leap themselves, and it's just enabled them to find amazing joy and passion in their lives. So today we are hearing from an amazing human. He has accomplished so much, Mr. Josh Linkner. Just to give you a thumbnail sketch of the many things that he's done, he actually started his career as a jazz guitarist in the music space, and he's taken that creativity, continues to be what he calls a disruptive innovator, which I just love. He has founded, built, and sold 5 companies with an exit value of over 200 million. He is a prolific author, a world-renowned speaker, and amazing dad of 4, a loving husband to Tia, and just so excited to interview his genius. So welcome to our show, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I am just gonna jump right in. You know, you have had the opportunity now, I didn't even mention, one of the things I love most about what you've done is this company, Detroit Venture Partners, where you're now actually helping others create their true joy and passion through mentoring and investing with entrepreneurs. Can you just kind of share with us maybe the nuts and bolts of what it takes to attract maybe a company like you for those that are looking to do that?
Sure. Yeah, we started Detroit Venture Partners about 10 years ago with the goal of helping to rebuild our hometown of Detroit. I was born in the city, not the suburbs, as were my parents and grandparents. And my partners and I had a real passion to rebuild our troubled city. And so we started investing in our case, tech entrepreneurs. And we thought maybe we'd make some money, but more importantly, maybe we could make a difference. And so we used investing and backing these passionate entrepreneurs, not only giving them capital, but also giving advice and coaching and access and office space, helping them soar because in turn it would help our city. And so doing this type of work, I've had the chance now, both inside and outside of the fund, to invest in or advise about 100 startups. And if you are considering, I know that's the topic of the show, if someone listening is considering starting their company and you need to raise money, there's a couple different routes you can go. Route number one is self-financing. Maybe you have savings, maybe you take a mortgage on your house or use credit cards. And that's been the way that many entrepreneurs in the past. I'm not going to provide any judgment on any of this, but that's one route. The second route you might call friends and family. So maybe you don't have the access to resources yourself, but maybe your brother-in-law's cousin's neighbor is really wealthy and he wants to or she wants to invest in your business. And so kind of rounding up on an informal, non-professional basis is another way to go. There are even some quasi-formal, what are called angel groups, which are sort of wealthy individuals that like helping small companies that may want to invest. And that would allow you to maybe invest up to $500,000, $1 million tops. And again, that might be all the capital that your new business needs. And that's awesome. No judgment on any of these. But the third option is what my fund did, which is a group of professional investors. In other words, we went out and raised a whole bunch of money. In our case, we raised $60 million, but many funds raise billions of dollars. And these are from, huge pension funds and other sources, sovereign wealth funds. And then it's their job to be a professional investor. They deeply understand and go through every aspect of your business plan. They are usually involved on your board. They may have some oversight responsibilities. So they are there in a very sort of non-passionate way, in a very just sort of thoughtful, rational way to invest in the businesses they think make sense and to support them along the route. So for anyone listening, those are 3 all valid routes to funding, either self-financing, friends and family, or a professional investor. Each of them have their own pros and cons, but just something you should know if you're considering starting a company.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, about your journey. You weren't necessarily in corporate, but you were certainly in something, very different than what you're doing now. Can you tell us a little bit about that leap for you?
Sure. So I was actually never able to hold a job apparently because I started my first company at age 20, and I don't think I've ever been, employed. But that being said, first of all, it was a leap starting my first company. And then I've sort of reinvented myself over the years. I went from an individual entrepreneur to starting another company and another one, and then starting a venture fund Today, I run a training and development business and a consulting practice, and I write and speak. And so I've had several of those leaps that your folks are thinking about making. And the first thing I'll say is that, look, it's not easy. It does require to muster up some courage, no question about it. That being said, if you want to look at pure risk, first of all, corporate America is not as safe as it used to be. So in the past, you could work at some giant company for 30 years and retire with a gold watch. I don't think that exists. So we may be thinking that we're overly secure in a typical corporate role. Second of all, when you start something new, yes, there are risks, and there's, by the way, lots of ways to de-risk it. Some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs are not what you think. They're not these guns a-blazing, wild, risk-crazy people. They actually try to do everything they can to make it less risky. So there may be a situation, maybe you land your first client before you take the jump or something, where it's much less risky than you might think. But to me, here's the biggest risk of all. The biggest risk of all is if you have a passion and a calling and a dream and you want to do work that matters, but you find yourself at the end of your life looking back with regret, that is by far the worst risk. And so I'm not trying to make anyone do anything they don't want to do. But if you've got this fire burning in your soul to build something of your own and pursue it, just really take a hard look at the real risk of doing nothing, both in the near term and then again later in life.
I love that you said that. I feel like for those that are listening to this or watching later, we're actually in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis right now. I think, what are we, like week 7? I don't even know what day it is sometimes, but Josh, you and I know that innovation comes out of these times, and we're going to look back at this time. There's going to be books written about this time in our history. What would you say to those people that they're sitting on the sidelines, and how can they make that jump and take advantage of this time?
So, first of all, acknowledging that we are in a terrible situation. It's our generation's World War II, and I don't mean to be glib or disrespectful at all. That being said, I do think there's a real opportunity here. When you look at crises of the past, whether it was the Great Depression or wars or 9/11 or the 2008 recession, out of each of those intense cauldrons of fire came wonderfully successful people and companies. So, we really can look at this as a sea change, yes, but there is opportunity in the crisis. The other thing I would say is that when you're sitting on the sidelines, as you use those words, what do you do with your time? So we could either say, I spend all my time worrying about the immediate crisis. Like I could hide in the corner, think about where I'm going to get my gloves and my face mask, and just be in fear and panic mode. And to be clear, there are real things that we need to address today. But do we need to spend all of our time doing that? I might suggest more of a balanced approach. Certainly, again, don't shirk responsibilities that are important today, but maybe you could do that in 60% of the time. And take the other 40% and say, okay, if that's my heads down time, 60% heads down in the crisis, what about 40% heads up time? And that's time where you could reimagine your future. Or you could think, hey, I've always wanted to start a restaurant. What could it possibly look like? Or how could I better serve customers if I opened up my own life insurance agency? Or if I want to start a mobile app company, what would it do? And so I think having time in which we're grounded and it's perhaps a bit distant can be wonderfully in creative time. This can be our artist studio in which we emerge with something new and beautiful and bold to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you excited about right now? What are maybe some new things you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm probably a good example of this. I spend a lot of time on the road. So I give over 100 keynotes a year all around the world, and I sit on boards, and I'm always in transit. And so now we're not. And so yes, I'm dealing with the fallout of not being on the road, but I'm also working on a couple really big creative projects that I had started before the crisis, but now I'm really going deep on it. I'm working on a new book, which is called Big Little Breakthroughs, talking about how we can all harness massive change in our lives, one little teeny bite at a time. I'm launching a new podcast called Creative Troublemakers, which is sort of innovation for the rest of us and how we can all make a little trouble, but in the most positive, of course, and supportive way. And I'm also doing a massive rebranding effort, which is, it's easy to put these things off to the side when you're in between stuff, but because I've got a little time to focus, I really feel like this is time to be in the artist studio. The other way I look at it personally, and maybe some of your listeners do too, think about a touring rock band like the Rolling Stones. So they might spend 18 months out on the road performing works that they created in the past. But then after the tour ends, they might take 12 months and be back in the studio where they're creating the next album and the next set of hits and practicing their moves and all that. And it goes in a cycle where it's a creative cycle, a performing cycle, a creative cycle, a performing cycle. And while I didn't raise my hand and wish for a pandemic, I'm saying, okay, now we have a chance to be in another creative cycle so that when we emerge from it, we've got a bunch of new material to perform.
I love it. Now you, with your current firm of Detroit Venture Partners, a lot of it sounds like is mentoring of others, which I think is so crucial for any big business builder. What has mentoring meant to you, and what can you share with people, maybe if they don't have a mentor, that they can do?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say. So early on in my career, I really didn't have any mentors, and it wasn't out of cockiness. I just didn't. Actually, it was the opposite. I didn't think I could access anybody worth talking to, or I didn't think anyone cared enough to give me help. And as a result, I made a ton of mistakes that I shouldn't have. Like it was not a good strategy. Later on in my career, I really was very lucky to get with people who were much further along than I was, whom I respected, and it made all the difference in the world. So a couple thoughts on finding a mentor. First of all, don't think that a mentor has to be all good or all bad. So there were some mentors that I had that I disagreed with some of their views on life, but there's also lots to learn. So it doesn't have to be like Gandhi to be your mentor. You could have somebody who you disagree with certain areas, but can learn a lot in others. Secondly is if you call up somebody and ask them to be your mentor, that's a pretty big ask. So I would just say start small. See if you can get 8 minutes of somebody's time. So if there's someone you really respect and say, listen, in the most humble way, can I please have 8 minutes of your time? I know your time is really valuable. How about this? I'll make a $500 donation in your name to the charity of your choice if you give me 8 minutes of your time. So maybe they don't even need the money, but like it shows that you're willing to do whatever it takes and you're going to be respectful of their time. And then if you really want them to mentor you, make the most of that 8 minutes and then get the next 8 minutes. And then, over time, it's like you don't meet someone and ask them to marry you. So date a little bit before you ask them to become your official mentor. And the other quick thing I would say is you don't need to have a living or interactive mentor.
Right.
Why can't, like Lin-Manuel Miranda is a mentor of mine. Unbelievable. He's the guy behind Hamilton, most creative, incredible Broadway guy I've ever, since the 50s. I've never met him. I probably never will. I would love to, by the way. But I can read interviews. I can read books. I can look at his art. I can study it critically. So I don't think we should limit ourselves to mentors that we can go have a coffee with physically. We can be mentored by some historical figure. We can be mentored by a villain. What about that? What can we learn from Darth Vader? Now, we're not going to go learn to do horrible things, but we can learn what not to do. So my point is, we don't have to have physical access to those that we want to learn from, nor do we have to agree with everything that they do, but we can be a sponge and learn and have mentors, both living and dead, fictional or not, accessible or inaccessible.
Yeah. So, one question I've wondered about, I feel like so many people have ideas for a company. What advice would you give around vetting that and, kind of understanding the need in the consumer and, whether or not the success would be there, the potential for success?
Yeah. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So many people might say, I have an idea for this particular type of snow shovel, and I'm going to go sell it through Home Depot. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Falling in love with the problem would be shoveling snow is no fun. And I hate shoveling snow because you then open up the possibilities far beyond reinventing a shovel. Maybe you come up with a melting device that is a technology that goes underneath your driveway. So the point is fall in love with the problem, not your solution, and be willing to course correct and adapt. It's funny, all these people that we celebrate, Mark Zuckerberg and Michael Dell and Elon Musk, we think about them as like this. Like they had some idea in the shower, and by the time they dried off, a limousine was waiting and they were whisked off to fame and fortune because the original idea was so spectacular. Almost never. Usually what happens is people's original ideas might be directionally interesting, but are totally flawed. And ideas only come to life through lots of these little pivots and adaptations and course corrections. And so my suggestion, again, with great respect, is find a problem that you have to solve, that you feel driven to solve, that just bothers you so much it has to be solved and no one's solving it. That will lead you on the right path because you won't care so much on how you solve it. You just want to get the thing solved.
Yeah. Now you're a dad of 4. You have actually some different generations, some older kids 20 and 22, and then 3-year-old twins. Is that right?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm a mom of 3, and I so, want to provide value to our youth. And I think a lot of kids, they look at maybe the life that their parents are living in corporate, and they don't see themselves there. What would you say to our youth about the joy you found in entrepreneurship and, taking risks and dreaming and things like that?
I mean, it's only my personal belief, but it's such a wonderful reward. Yes, there's ups and downs, there's struggles. We tend to glamorize it, and honestly, entrepreneurship sometimes can feel more like a street fight than wearing, white gloves and having tea. That being said, the real intrinsic rewards are far greater than the economic ones. And I'm very fortunate, and I'm blessed, and all kinds of extraordinary economic wealth and all that. But the real reward is when someone comes in and says, "Hey, I'm the first person in my family to buy a home." And you help make that happen. Or you get something from a customer or a client that says how much you made a difference in their lives. It gives us a chance as an entrepreneur to leave your stamp on the world and make the world a better place and challenge yourself to reach your own full potential. And that when you're an entrepreneur, the only governor, it's not some boss who won't give you a promotion, it's you. You have the chance to spread your wings as far and wide as you possibly can. So to be clear, every minute is not amazing. There's many hard times. You're going to get punched in the gut many times. But the overcoming of those obstacles that you build, the resiliency, the creative output, to me, it's a really noble profession to create jobs to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, you've obviously been a founder of product-oriented companies and service. And I do find that actually, like you said, building of people can be the most rewarding profession. Can you tell me a little bit about that in your life?
Yeah, when you think about what you're building as a company, most people say, well, what does your company do? And you say, well, I sell desks. But to a degree, what you've built isn't just a company that makes desks. You've built a company that's got a culture and a soul. And so I think that entrepreneurs, it's funny. I say when I've made an investment, well, tell me about who you are. And they're like, well, again, I make desks. I'm like, yeah, but what do you stand for? What's your beliefs? What's your culture? I'll figure that out once we make our first desk. And I think entrepreneurs have it backwards. I think your first step is to figure out who you are. Second step, figure out what you do. And in my case, I've created these 14 operating principles, these fundamentals that are to me, the underpinnings of our philosophy. They guide decisions on a daily basis. It means that I don't have to have an 800-page rule book because people I hire hire for and then cultivate these principles. And they're fun. They're little catchphrases. One of them, for example, is we use every drop of toothpaste, which is a reminder to be scrappy and make sure we're being resource focused. Another one is don't forget the dinner mint, which means that we always look for opportunities to add a little something extra, whether it's an internal thing or an external thing. What's that little plus up that we can go from just hitting the expected to something that's unexpected, like a little surprise and delight. So what we do is these core fundamental who we are principles drive every decision, big and small. And that's something I'm really proud of, much more than like a product or service that we built.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so is it kind of almost like your code of honor, sort of in your company?
Exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
By the way, I just wanted to circle back. So you asked about kids. As mentioned, I have 2 older ones, 22 and 20. And here's what I told my kids at that age. I said, look, you don't have massive responsibilities yet. You don't have a mortgage and a family and all that kind of stuff. So now is the perfect time to take whatever risk you want to do. Let's just say my daughter, Chloe, who's this amazing, smart, talented person. Let's say she wants to start a company. She's 20 now. So I said, either way you win, Chloe. Either way you win. Either you start a company, it's crazy successful, and you buy a Ferrari and imagine one for dad, or it's a total failure and you lose everything. And you know what you did? You got so much education and value. Even if you went back to corporate America, you leapfrog your competitive candidates because of this rich experience. So either way you win. And so I think to me, the real risk is doing nothing. The real risk is taking no risks. The real risk is standing still. And so as our kids are growing up, as long as they're nurturing creative problem solving and inventive thinking, I think especially when you're young, that's a wonderful time to take a quote unquote risk. Because again, I think the real risk is go find yourself in some soulless desk job for the rest of your life. That's a risk that's not worth taking.
Yeah. I mean, one of my speakers yesterday, she said, you know, don't need to ask permission to do things. And I think a lot of times that's what's holding people back is they're waiting for it to be okay with someone, this addiction for approval from others that we have. How would you advise people that maybe they've failed in the past and they're just like kind of gripped with fear and it's blocking them from moving forward?
Well, a couple of thoughts. First of all, in Silicon Valley anyway, if somebody has failed at a company before, they are infinitely more attractive to invest in.
Interesting.
So the investor says, great, they learned on someone else's dime. That's awesome. They know what it's like to go through the fire. So that doesn't have to be a scarlet letter. It could, in fact, can be a badge of honor. Second point that I would make is that, again, entrepreneurs are misunderstood. We think of them as that they just like jump off the top of a building and build a parachute on the way, and most of them splatter on the surface. That's really not what the most successful entrepreneurs do. The most successful entrepreneurs are thoughtful and data-driven, and they test lots of things, and they try. In other words, they're constantly working to de-risk the entrepreneurial process. So the idea of staying in corporate America equals safe, and starting a new company equals irresponsibly risky. I don't think that equates at all. In other words, let's say you wanted to, I help people often in the world of professional speaking. And many of those people are in corporate America. And then they say, well, when should I take the leap? Like, when should I quit my job and go all in on professional speaking? You know what my answer is? When you run out of sick days.
Right.
Like, why not have your current employer essentially be the investor in your new business until you can't do it anymore? And so, again, I don't think that being an entrepreneur means doing something stupid or putting your family in jeopardy. Quite the opposite. Just be thoughtful about it. Have a plan. Maybe your plan is you're going to build this as a side hustle, and that as that curve goes up, you're still maintaining your other job. And then when it crosses over, then cut your other job, and now you've got some, a solid platform to land on, as opposed to doing something that really could jeopardize your future.
I love that you said, that side hustle. I've been recruiting for 25 years, and I find I've worked with so many companies where the owner, they're wearing all the hats and they're pouring all the money back into the business. They're not paying themselves first in terms of savings. Can you kind of speak about maybe like the financial responsibility to your family and to yourself when you're building? Because you seem like you've really done it, like you said, in a very data-driven and methodical approach. At least that's what it appears like.
There's not one size fits all. So different businesses have obviously different capital requirements and such. If you're building a metalworking factory, it's very different than starting a software company in terms of the investment needed and such. But as a general rule, I think certainly you're going to be prepared to make some sacrifices. If you feel like, hey, I'm only going to start a company when I can match my corporate salary and benefits and company car and all that stuff, you may never start the company. So there may be some, sacrifices that you'll make along the way, but just make sure you're balancing it. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There's a lot of gray area in there, So maybe you take some time to save up from your corporate job, and then you start a company only when you can pay yourself, call it a living salary. So maybe you're not taking fancy trips and buying exotic cars this year or whatever, but you can put food on the table. And then maybe you make a commitment that each year, here's how I'm going to invest my profits. I'm going to give myself, I'm just making this up, 25% of those profits as a raise so I can continue to build my own personal income. And the other 75% of the profits, I'll reinvest back into the business to grow enterprise value. So again, whatever formulas you or your listeners choose is up to you. It's personal, but just have a plan, basically. So you're not finding yourself 11 years in and you've never taken a penny, nor are you finding yourself milking every dime of profit out of the business and strangling the growth of the company.
How, in your world, I hear the average millionaire has 7 income streams. How do you choose to diversify personally? And, how do you determine whether that is a good investment, and whether it's something to walk away from?
I think there's a little bit of a fallacy in that. That may be true that the average millionaire, has 7 income streams, but most of them I don't think had 7 income streams to get them to the point where they were a millionaire.
Right.
I think it's kind of the opposite. They like that saying, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Entrepreneurship, to a degree, is once you've kind of figured it out, please take the time to figure it out. It's you take every egg you've ever had and put it in one basket, and you borrow eggs from your neighbors and like just put like every egg you can find and just keep putting eggs in that one basket. Because that sort of monomaniacal focus is what really builds wealth. So I don't think that if you're a brand new entrepreneur and you haven't yet built, a sizable personal wealth, I don't think it should be like, hey, how can I get 7 income streams right away? There's a great saying, which I've always loved. It's an ancient Chinese proverb: chase 2 rabbits and both will escape. And so I would say, like, get 1 stream of income, like super pinpoint laser focus, and get really good and successful at that. Yeah, then later on, if you want to have 7 or 18, God bless you. But like, I'd start with 1.
Right, absolutely. So, gosh, we are almost out of time here. I wonder, one question I always like to ask people is, and you've kind of already told us this with your mention about Chloe, if you weren't able to leave assets to your children, you could just leave them knowledge, what would you say to your kids?
I wouldn't want to leave them knowledge in the form of facts, because we
Right.
can Google that type of stuff. I would want to leave them the ability to do creative problem solving, inventive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the teach the man or woman to fish, but like, what the world doesn't need going forward is people who had the hard skills of the past, because computers and technology and artificial intelligence are going to handle that. What will be of real value to them, both personally and professionally, is their ability to use creative problem solving and inventive thinking, both on when they're trying to grow and win, and also when they're trying to fight back from adversity. I think that ability to resilience and creativity, those are the skills that I would want to impart on them. And I sure hope that's what they take from me.
Yeah, I love that. So let's look at 20 years from now. You're sitting on your porch, your grandchild comes up to you, and they just learned about COVID-19 in school. And they're like, Grandpa, were you alive then? I heard people went crazy. What did you do? What are you going to say?
Other than not shaving, I'd probably say that, you know what? It was a time where people did 2 different things. Some people were so consumed with fear and they became myopic. They only would look at the near term. And then when it finally passed, they sort of like, came out into the sun and it was really bright all of a sudden, and they were no better off. Perhaps they were worse off when the thing started. And that probably is going to be like 90% of the people, maybe more than 90%.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to tell my grandkid that there was this 10% of people. There's 10% of people that weren't irresponsible. They took care of what they had to take care of, but they also used that time as a gift. They use it as an opportunity to reimagine and to explore and to try things and get creative, and those people emerged different and stronger and transformed. They use the time the way a caterpillar uses the time in a cocoon, so that there was a transformative effect from COVID-19 rather than a detrimental one. And those are the people, grandson or granddaughter, that have made history since. Those are the people we read about. Those are the people whose companies we celebrate. And those are the new stars of our era today, the people that use that time to their advantage.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh my goodness, Josh, thank you so much for your time. I know that you had a complimentary gift that you wanted to give our audience. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, if anyone is interested in continuing to pursue this notion of creative thinking, creative problem solving, et cetera, it's really been my life's work. I've spent now 40 years playing jazz guitar, and I'm very passionate about it. So if you'd like to visit my website, which is just joshlinkner.com, that's JOSHLINKNER.com, there's a whole host of resources. There's a free creativity assessment, so you can kind of get it. It's almost like getting on the scale and seeing how things are looking today. Certainly room for improvement always. There's tons of tools. There's quotes that are inspiring. There's 10 plus years of weekly blogs, all kinds of things to drive you both inspirationally and tactically. So if that's of service, check it out, joshlinkner.com.
Awesome. And I'm excited to see your next book coming out. When are you launching, or when are you targeting to launch?
Well, the manuscript will be completed by October, and so it's not going to be out until about a year from now, April of 2021. The cycle in commercial publishing is very long, but I'm really excited about this one. I'm hoping that it's my new best book. So
yeah, and tell us your new podcast again real quick.
Yeah, the new podcast is called Creative Troublemakers,
That's good.
which is really this. If anyone's ever felt like a misfit, or they didn't feel like, that everything was just made for them, or they felt like an outcast, this is a chance to really spread your creative wings and learn from unexpected people doing amazing things. It's really a very fun podcast. There's live jazz, which I record in the studio. That's the soundtrack to the whole thing. It's like not like every other podcast. So I think people will dig it. It's launching in June, and you can also learn more about that at joshlinkner.com. And the website for that right now is called TroublemakerNation.com.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Josh. Thank you to our listeners. Be sure and tune in tomorrow to our Corporate to Entrepreneur series that we're hosting. We're hearing from so many experts that are sharing their true joy and passion that they found through business building and entrepreneurship. Bless you all in your life journey. Bye.
Thank you again.